They say when greed and jealousy eats deep into you, you begin to do the scariest things. He pushed his own brother into a well because of a piece of land, but he didn't know that the land doesn't punish the innocent, but the wicked. In the old days, when the moonlight was bright enough to gather children in the village square and elders told stories beside the evening fire, there lived two brothers in a peaceful village of Umodara. The land was fertile, the streams were clear, and the people believed that family was the strongest bond a person could ever have. Among all the families in Umodara, none were closer than the sons of old Okonkwo, Obike and Ikenna. Obike, the first son, was strong and serious. From childhood, he carried the pride of being the eldest. The villagers often said he had the shoulders of a man who would one day lead his father's household. Ikenna, the younger one, was cheerful and gentle. His laughter filled his father's compound, and wherever he walked, people felt at ease. Though younger, he was wise and patient. The villagers often admired his calm spirit. The two brothers grew like twin trees from the same root. Wherever Obike went, Ikenna followed. They worked together on the farm, fetched water together, and when evening came, they sat side by side listening to their father's stories. Their father, Okonkwo, was a respected man. He owned fertile farmlands that stretched beyond the tall Iroko tree at the edge of the village. His barns were always full after harvest, and his household never lacked food. But what made the old man happiest was not his land or wealth. It was the love between his sons. Every evening, as he watched them return from the farm, laughing together, he would smile quickly and say to the elders who visited him, "These two are like palm wine and kola nuts. They are better when they are together." The villagers believed the brothers would grow old, protecting one another. But life, like Hamatan wind, sometimes changes direction without warning. One dry season evening, the old man fell ill. At first, it seemed like an ordinary sickness. The village healer prepared herbs, and the village women in the compound boiled medicinal leaves. But as the days passed, the strength of Okonkwo began to fade like the last glow of sunset. Before the moon completed its cycle, the respected elder joined his ancestors. The entire village mourned. Drums were silent. Smoke from cooking fires rose slowly into the quiet sky. Obike and Ikenna buried their father with honor. As tradition demanded, the elders prayed for peace in the family and reminded the brothers that unity would keep their father's spirit proud among the ancestors. But after the mourning period ended, another matter had to be settled: the sharing of Okonkwo's land. The elders gathered beneath the ancient Udara tree. The air was heavy with expectation as they discussed how the farmland should be divided. Custom said the eldest son should receive a respectable portion, but the elders also believed fairness was important. Ikenna had spent many years caring for the distant farmland near the river, a place that produced rich harvests because of the fertile soil. The elders considered this while making their decision. When the final sharing was announced, Ikenna received the larger portion of the land near the river, while Obike was given a slightly smaller piece closer to the village. At first, Obike said nothing. His face remained calm as the elders spoke blessings over the decision. But inside his heart, something had begun to grow, something dark and heavy: jealousy. Each day that followed, the thought remained to him like a stubborn shadow. Whenever he passed the river path and saw Ikenna's large farmland stretching into the distance, bitterness filled his heart. The same brother he once protected now seemed like a rival standing between him and what he believed was his rights. The love that had once lived in Obike's heart slowly began to fade. At home, another voice added fuel to the fire: his wife, Adora. Adora was beautiful and clever, but her mind was sharp like a knife hidden inside cloth. She watched everything carefully and spoke words that often carried hidden weights. When she noticed her husband's silent anger, she began to whisper thoughts into his ear. Night after night, she reminded him of the land. She spoke about how the younger brother now had more land than the first son. She asked questions that stirred the jealousy already living in his heart. Slowly, the bitterness inside Obike grew stronger. Soon, whenever he saw Ikenna approaching with his usual cheerful smile, Obike's face became hard like carved wood. The laughter that once lived in their compound disappeared. The brothers who once walked side by side now walked different paths, and the villagers of Umuadara began to whisper among themselves, for they knew something dangerous had entered the household of Wankwo: greed. And in many stories told under the moonlight, greed has always been the seed from which tragedy grows. Yet, Ikenna with his kind heart did not see the storm forming around him. He still believed that blood was stronger than anger. But in Obike's house, Adora had already begun to plan something darker. something that would change the story of two brothers forever. And in the quiet corners of the village, fate had already started moving towards a day that Umodara would never forget. As seasons passed in Umodara, the distance between the two brothers grew wider than a crack in the dry earth. The compound that once echoed with shared laughter now became quiet and divided. Obike no longer visited Ikenna's house, and when they met in the village square, their greetings were short and cold. Only Ikenna's wife, Nneka, noticed how deep the change had become. Nneka was a thoughtful woman whose eyes missed very little. She had watched the slow transformation in Obike's face, the way his smile had vanished, and the way Adora's words were always seen to follow him like shadows. Something about it troubled her spirit, but Ikenna remained the same gentle soul he had always been. To him, Obike was still the older brother who once carried him on his back across muddy paths when they were boys. He believed time would heal whatever bitterness had grown between them. Yet, inside Obike's household, darker thoughts were beginning to take shape. Adora had watched her husband's jealousy grow day after day. To her, the sight of Ikenna's large farmland near the river felt like an insult. Whenever villagers praised the rich harvest from that land, Adora's face tightened. One evening, as the sun sank behind the tall palm trees, she sat beside Obike outside their hut. The smell of roasted maize and distant voices floated through the evening breeze, but Adora's mind was not on the peaceful village around her. Her eyes burned with quiet determination. She began to speak again about the land. She reminded Obike that the first son should never be overshadowed by the younger. She spoke about respect, pride, and the way villagers had started to admire Ikenna's prosperity. Her words slowly stirred the anger that already lived in Obike's heart. By the time darkness covered the village, the bitterness inside him had hardened into something far more dangerous. That night, Adora revealed the plan she had been quietly keeping in her mind. The next morning, while the village women gathered near the stream, Adora stayed behind in the compound. She moved quietly through the kitchen hut, selecting ingredients for a meal. The smell of spices soon filled the air as she prepared a rich pot of soup. But hidden among the cooking leaves was something else, something bitter that should never have entered the food meant for another person. When the meal was finished, Adora turned to Obike with calm confidence. It was time. Later that afternoon, Obike sent words to his younger brother. He said it had been too long since they shared the meal together. He spoke of rebuilding their brotherhood and forgetting the disagreements of the past. When Ikenna received the message, his face brightened up. At last, he thought his brother had remembered the bond they once shared. But when he told his wife about the invitation, Nneka's heart grew uneasy. She sat quietly for a moment, staring at the floor of their hut, as if searching for something hidden within the dust. A strange feeling had settled inside her chest. Nneka had watched the coldness between the brothers for too long. The sudden invitation did not sit well with her spirit. She looked at her husband with serious eyes. Though she could not accuse anyone directly, she warned him that something did not feel right. Ikenna listened patiently. He understood her concern, but his loyalty to his brother was stronger than suspicion. To him, family could not harm family. Yet, Nneka's worry did not fade. Before he left the compound, she gave him one final piece of advice. If he must go to his brother's house, he should be very careful about eating anything there. Ikenna laughed softly at the suggestion. Still, he promised her he would be conscious. With that, he began the short walk to Obike's compound. The evening sun cast long shadows across the dusty path as he approached the house he once visited almost every day of his childhood. When he arrived, Obike greeted him with a smile that looked forced but polite. Adora also welcomed him warmly, acting as though nothing had ever stood between them. Soon the meal was brought out. The aroma of the soup filled the room, rich and inviting. Adora served the food quietly, placed it before Ikenna, but as the bowl rested in front of him, Nneka's warnings echoed in his mind. He suddenly remembered the seriousness in his wife's eyes. A quiet hesitation settled within him. When Adora encouraged him to eat, Ikenna smiled politely and shook his head. He explained that he had already eaten earlier and was not hungry. Obike insisted. Adora insisted even more, but Ikenna remained calm and firm. No matter how much they encouraged him, he refused to touch the food. The tension in the room slowly thickened like smoke. Inside, Adora's frustration burned like hidden fire. The plan had failed. Eventually, Ikenna thanked them for the invitation and left the compound. As his footsteps faded down the path, Adora's patience disappeared. Her anger burst out like thunder after a silent storm. The opportunity had slipped away, but her mind was already searching for another way, a darker way. She turned to Obike with cold determination. If the first plan had failed, they would find another method. This time, she promised there would be no chance for escape, and somewhere beyond the farmlands of Umodara, an old abandoned well waited silently among tall grasses, a deep place where voices could disappear without echo, a place that would soon become part of the terrible story of the two brothers. The Harmattan wind soon arrived in Umodara. Dry dust floated through the air and settled softly on rooftops, trees, and farmland. Farmers spent long hours clearing their fields, preparing the soil for the next planting season. But inside Obike's heart, no season of peace existed. Adora's anger over the failed meal had not faded. Instead, it has grown stronger with each day passing by. Every time she heard villagers praising Ikenna's fertile farmland near the river, her bitterness deepened. To her, Ikenna's success was a shadow hanging over their household. One evening, as the sun turned the sky deep orange, Adora sat beside Obike and spoke again about the problem they believed stood on their way. Her voice was calm but cold. The first plan had failed, but there was other ways to solve their problem. This time, she spoke of a place outside the village, an abandoned well hidden among tall grasses near the far farms. Long ago, it has provided water for travelers, but after the river expanded its path, the well was forgotten. The stone walls still stood, but few villagers ever went near it. Adora suggested a simple idea. If Ikenna could be taken there alone, no one would witness what happened. Obike listened in silence. At first, his heart resisted the thought. Somewhere deep inside him lived the memory of the younger brother who once followed him everywhere as a child. But jealousy has a way of clouding good memories. Adora continued to speak until the last bit of hesitation inside him slowly disappeared. By the end of the night, the terrible decision had been made. The following day, Obike approached his brother with a friendly tone he had used in a long time. He spoke about farmland. He said he needed help inspecting a section of the land near the old farms, beyond the tall grasses. He explained that he wanted his younger brother's opinion about planting crops there. To Ikenna, the invitation felt like a step forward towards a reconciliation. Perhaps, he thought, the bitterness between them had finally ended. Without suspicion, he agreed to go. Early the next morning, the two brothers set out together. The path they followed was narrow and quiet. Birds moved through the dry branches above them, while the wind carried the smell of dust and dry leaves. For a moment, the walk felt like the old days, but Obike's mind was not on memories. He kept glancing towards the tall grasses ahead where the abandoned well waited. After some time, they reached the farmland area Adora had mentioned. Obike pointed towards the thick grasses and suggested they walk further inside to suspect the soil near the center. Ikenna followed him without hesitation. The ground grew uneven as they moved, deeper into the overgrown area. Soon, the circular stone age of the old well appeared between the tall grasses. It looked ancient and forgotten. Ikenna stepped closer to examine it. The moment he leaned slightly forward to look inside, Obike's heart pounded heavily. For a brief second, his mind flashed with memories of their childhood, the laughter, the shared walk, their father's proud smile. But the jealousy and anger that had been growing inside him quickly pushed those memories aside. In a sudden motion, he pushed his younger brother forward. Ikenna lost his balance and disappeared into the deep darkness of the well. His voice echoed briefly against the stone walls before fading into silence. Obike stood frozen beside the well. The wind moved gently through the tall grasses as if nothing had happened. For several moments, he simply stared at the well, breathing heavily. Then fear began creeping into his chest. But instead of helping his brother, he slowly turned away and walked back towards the village. Days passed. In the beginning, Ikenna remained trapped at the bottom of the deep well. The stone walls were too high and smooth to climb. He called out many times, but the abandoned farmland was far from the village paths. His voice reached no one. Hunger and thirst slowly drained his strength. Above him, the sky appeared as a small circle of light. Day after day passed while he struggled to survive. Meanwhile, in the village, Obike began acting as if he was searching for his missing brother. He visited farms and asked neighbors if anyone had seen Ikenna. His voice carried worry and he pretended to look deeply troubled. The villagers joined the search for some time, but as the days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. Finally, Obike gathered the elders and announced with a heavy voice that his brother must have died somewhere in the wide bushes among the farmland. The news spread quickly around Umodara. Many people felt sorrow, especially Nneka. Her heart refused to accept the story completely. Something about the situation never felt right to her spirit, but without proof, she could only grieve quietly. While the villagers believed Ikenna was gone, fate was preparing a different ending. One afternoon, a hunter named DK was traveling through the far grasslands searching for bushmeat. As he moved through the area, he heard a weak sound rising from somewhere nearby. At first, he thought it might be an animal trapped in a hole, but when he followed the sound, he found the abandoned well. Looking down carefully, he saw a man laying weakly at the bottom. Without wasting time, the hunter lowered the rope and slowly pulled the nearly unconscious man to the surface. When Ikenna finally reached the ground, he collapsed from exhaustion. The hunter carried him to his small hut deep in the forest and cared for him patiently. For many months, the hunter treated him with herbs and nourishing food until strength slowly returned to his body. During those long months, Ikenna had time to think. He understood clearly what had happened, yet anger did not grow inside him the way jealousy had grown inside Obike. Instead, he waited quietly for the day he would return home. Back in Omodara, life continued as if Ikenna truly had disappeared forever. Obike began using his younger brother's farmland. He even visited the Nneka and collected many of the household properties, claiming they belonged to the family of the missing man. Nneka endured everything with silent patience. Deep inside her heart, she still believed the story was not finished. And far away in the forest, the day of Ikenna's return was slowly approaching. Many months passed after the hunter rescued Ikenna from the deep well. The dry harmattan wind had faded, and the rains had returned to the land. The farms around Umodara were green again, and the river near the fertile fields flowed gently beneath the tall palm trees. Life in the village continued as if Ikenna had truly vanished from the world. People spoke of him sometimes in quiet conversations, remembering his kindness and true nature. Many believed his spirit had joined the ancestors somewhere beyond the forest. But Nneka never allowed that belief to settle in her heart. Each evening she sat quietly outside her hut, staring at the path that led to the distance. Something deep inside her told her the story was not yet finished. Meanwhile, Obike had grown comfortable with his new life he had created. Since the villagers believed his brother was gone, he began using the fertile farmland near the river as if it belonged to him. The rich soil produced strong harvests, and Obike proudly filled his barns with crops from the land. He also visited the Nneka's compound and collected many of Ikenna's belongings, claiming that as the eldest brother in the family, it was his responsibility to take control of the property. Though Nneka's heart was heavy, she did not argue. She simply watched quietly as the man she once respected carried away what belonged to her husband. The villagers believed Obike was only following family tradition, but the truth sat silently in the shadows of his heart. Far away in the forest, the hunter who had rescued Ikenna continued to care for him patiently. The months of rest and herbal treatment slowly restored his strength. The weak man who had once been pulled from the well gradually returned to the strong farmer he used to be. During the quiet months, Ikenna spoke very little about the events that had brought him there. The hunter noticed that despite everything that had happened, the man did not allow bitterness to fill his spirit. When the day finally came for him to leave, the hunter walked him to the edge of the forest. The road back to Umodara stretched ahead like a long-forgotten memory. With gratitude in his heart, Ikenna thanked the hunter deeply before beginning the journey home. As he walked towards the village, memories returned to him one after the other. The path he and Obike used to travel as boys, and the compound where his wife waited. By the time he reached the outskirts of Umodara, evening had begun to fall. Smoke from cooking fires coiled into the sky, and distant voices drifted through the air. When Nneka saw a familiar figure walking slowly along the path towards her compound, she froze in disbelief. For a moment, her mind could not understand what her eyes were seeing. Then, recognition struck her like lightning. Ikenna had returned. She ran towards him, overwhelmed with relief and excitement. The joy that filled her heart in that moment was greater than any words could express. Inside their hut that night, Ikenna told her everything. He explained the invitation to the farm, the abandoned well, and the long days he spent trapped there before the hunter rescued him. Nneka listened silently as the truth unfolded. Though she had suspected something was wrong all along, hearing the full story still sent a deep chill through her heart. When morning arrived, news began spreading quietly through the village. Some villagers had already seen Ikenna walking near his compound. At first, people thought their eyes had deceived them, but as the whisper spread, curiosity grew. Ikenna, however, did not rush to speak with anyone. There was only one person he wanted to see first. Later that afternoon, he began walking towards Obike's compound. The path was the same as he walked many years before, but now each step carried a different weight. When he reached the entrance, Obike was standing outside inspecting baskets of harvested crops. He looked proud and satisfied with the prosperity around him. When he noticed someone approaching, at first Obike only glanced briefly, but when his eyes settled properly on the figure walking towards him, the basket in his hand slipped away and fell to the ground. For a moment, he could not move. Standing before him was the only brother he believed would never return. The same brother he had left in the darkness of the deep well. The color drained slowly from Obike's face as fear gripped him. Ikenna stood calmly before him, alive and unharmed. The silence between them felt heavier than thunder. Inside Obike's mind, panic exploded like a storm. The secret he believed was buried forever had suddenly risen before him like a spirit demanding truth. His breathing became uneven. His eyes widened as confusion and fear overwhelmed him. The guilt he had buried inside finally broke free. Before anyone could understand what was happening, Obike began shouting. He staggered backwards, pointing at Ikenna as if he was seeing something frightening. His voice became loud and uncontrolled as he ran around the compound in panic. Villagers nearby rushed towards the scene, confused by the sudden noise. They watched in shock as the once proud man ran through the compound, speaking in broken words and trembling with fear. The sight of his brother had shattered the weight of guilt he carried. From that moment, Obike's mind could no longer find peace. The villagers quickly realized something terrible had happened. Whispers spread through Umudara like wind through the dry leaves. Soon, the truth about the well, the jealousy, and the betrayal began to surface. And as the elders often say in many African folktales, a person may hide a secret beneath the ground, but one day the earth itself will reveal it. Ikenna did not seek revenge. Instead, he returned quietly to his farmland and rebuilt the life that had almost been taken away from him. The villagers of Umuodara never forgot the story of the two brothers. For generations, elders told it to children sitting beneath the moonlight. It became a lesson carried through time, a reminder that jealousy can destroy even the strongest bond, and that greed often brings trouble to the very person who carries it. And whenever people pass through the tall grasses where the old well still stood, they remember the story of Obike and Ikenna, the brothers whose love was broken by envy. The end. Please do not forget to like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comment section.